Thursday Night Football, Seattle Seahawks at the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys favored by 9.5. Seattle, we've talked about a little bit on the show about how they're in the middle of this stretch where they're going to be touchdown plus underdogs. Last week was the first game of that stretch. They lost 31-13 to the 49ers. They're at Dallas tonight. They've got San Francisco again next week, and then the Eagles. So the 6-5 Seattle Seahawks, their season on the brink here of falling apart in a challenging little run. And then Dallas, as hot as any team right now, and Dak Prescott in particular, as hot as any quarterback. He is in the middle of a stretch that is really maybe as good as we've ever seen in the PFF era, the last 5 or 6 games. Currently the highest graded quarterback by our numbers. And, just since their bye and since getting waxed by San Francisco, he's been unbelievable.
The latest MVP favorite in a season where that seems to change every single week.
Dak's not the favorite.
I think he is now, right?
Oh, no, I think he's only up to 4th or something. It's a weird MVP case, again, because they've beat up on bad teams.
Yeah.
And usually that doesn't bode well. I mean, you still earn it by what you do on the field, but Dak having a 92 grade right now. There's two.
Oh, that's right. Jalen Hurts became favorite after winning a game, whereas Dak Prescott is 3rd.
Yes.
After just dominating a game.
But if they beat the Eagles at home, which I think they could do, then that'll flip potentially.
Right.
And then Mahomes also, the Chiefs don't play a good team for the rest of the year, basically, other than maybe the Bills. So they'll probably just end up 14-3, and Mahomes could end up with it again. But Dak Prescott, 2 ways to look at this. Remember, we said Jared Goff was our highest graded quarterback a couple weeks ago. And on one hand, you give him credit for playing well. On the other hand, it's like, he's never really played at this level, so maybe there's some regression. Would you ever look at Dak through that same lens and say, hey, credit for where you are, but you've never been a 92 graded quarterback? That should come back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing at the kind of level that right now I think is probably unsustainable. I mean, he's got 90-plus grades in, 5 of his last 7 games.
And by the way, just from a game grade perspective, that is very difficult to do, right? There's a difference in a 90 season grade, which might be a whole lot of good that adds up to very good, but 90 game grades are elite, and that is very tough to do as often as he has.
Geno Smith's amazing year last year was built largely off the back of 2 90 grades, right? They are extremely difficult to do. So having 5 of them in an entire season is pretty impressive. Having 5 of them in 7 games is unrealistic as a baseline, and there's no way he sustains that even if he continues to play teams that they are way better than, which is sort of how the entire Dallas team seems to be built right now, which is just beating up on teams that they are significantly better than. I think fundamentally, the Seahawks game becomes really interesting because they're in the middle, right? They're not the Eagles or the 49ers, which are the teams that Dallas seems to struggle against, those really elite teams, and they're not the teams that they tend to beat up on. They are somewhere in the middle, so it's almost a perfect opportunity for Dallas to actually level set and say, right, what happens when you face a team that isn't elite or a team that you should be beating up on that's actually just somewhere in the middle? A pretty good team, albeit coming off not necessarily their best performance. What does this do to Dallas?
Yeah, I think Seattle's in I think tactically tonight for Seattle, most of the times we don't talk about, hey, lean on the run game. This might have to be the way Seattle does this. Ken Walker's still hurt, but Zach Charbonnet and it looks like Abe Lucas is coming back on the offensive line. Is this actually one of those games where Seattle's got to play old school Pete Carroll football? And if there is a weakness on the Cowboys defense, it's been their run defense for multiple years now. It's certainly not as good as their ability to rush the passer and their ability to have pick sixes, because Deron Bland is a legend. So I think it's one of those games where Seattle's got to shorten it up, run the ball a little bit, and see if they can pull that off. Because Dallas just has this ability, once they know you have to pass, right? Even the Thanksgiving game was close, but it's all right, we got a pick 6. We're gonna lean on you. Seattle's just got to kind of give themselves an opportunity to win in the 4th, which is very old school Pete Carroll football.
Yeah, they're in it's difficult for Seattle to sort of effectively game plan, I think, on offense, because you look at like their strengths, and Geno Smith is an incredible deep ball thrower. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN, like they're built essentially to pass the ball. But the weakness is the offensive line, and particularly when you're going up against Dallas, like the Cowboys still have the best pass rush in the NFL. So like your biggest punch is built off going up against their biggest punch, and their biggest punch is probably better and has the capacity to sort of kill yours at source. Whereas like the alternative, as you're saying, is instead you sort of lean into the run game and try and do it that way. And it's less likely to sort of knock them over, you know?
I showed a similar stat a couple weeks ago, but along those lines, when you have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and you want to throw to them, well, Dallas's corners, their outside corners, Bland and Gilmore for the most part this year, when they've been targeted, outside corners for Dallas, minus 0.3 EPA per play. We talked about a couple days ago, the Patriots' pass offense the last 2 weeks is minus 0.4 EPA per play, right? So very similar range, and it's been a horrendous passing offense for New England the last couple weeks. So that's how good Dallas's outside corners have been when targeted this entire season. Of course, that's skewed by all the pick sixes. That's going to crush your EPA per play. It's just a perspective thing. No other team in the league is even close to negative EPA per play when targeting their outside corners. It's another one of those stats that seems completely unsustainable, but it's one of the stories of Dallas's season in that the third straight year, Dan Quinn and that defense has been unreal at creating turnovers. We know Geno Smith has had some turnover-worthy play issues the last couple of years. So I think that's why Dallas is favored by 9.5. And I think Seattle's only chance is obviously mistake-free football. Take care of the ball. Don't turn it over. But I really think their run game is going to be needed to protect, because their offensive line should not be able to handle Dallas, and I think they need to shorten it up and run it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely possible. One more piece of information for you. Seattle is wearing their throwback uniforms.
Oh, on the road. So this is so it'll be because Dallas will wear white, of course.
So it's a lot of good juju colliding.
Like Ricky Waters, Seattle Seahawks.
Right.
Here.
Ricky Waters, Seattle Seahawks going up against Dallas at home, where they dominate everybody.
Yeah. It's a tough one. Dallas averaging over 40 points a game at home. They've overtaken Miami as the highest scoring home team.
The other element, actually, so I think you're probably right, and that's what Seattle will try and do. Having said that, if Dallas does get up, and in the scenario where they've been just putting the pedal to the metal and running away from teams, once they get a lead and they can tee off and they really sort of pour gas on the fire, like Seattle's actually an unusual team in terms of potentially being able to claw that back, because like if they're forced into that scenario, you might get a couple of deep balls or big plays to DK Metcalf or whatever. Does that actually claw back the deficit a bit?
Yeah, I think potentially. I think I think there's two ways of looking at it. You're either going to try to shorten the game and play conservative, or you're just going to go all out and say Geno can make big time throws and our receivers can make big time plays, and we've got 3 of them now, and we're going to try to keep up with this Dallas offense. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be close. I think Seattle can also keep it within the 9.5, even though a lot of signs point to Dallas being the better team.